Hey there, I'm back with another medical themed video. This one is about section 2 of the Gamsat exam. Of those of you who are familiar, you probably already know this. For those of you who don't know, section 2 is basically you have to write 2 critical essays in the space of an hour, which is quite challenging, and I think you're kind of expected to the very least have 2 A4 pages. It's not easy, but it's the easiest place to pick up marks, and it's definitely the reason why I'm studying medicine at the moment. So it's worth giving it some thought. I think a lot of the time people are freaked out by it, especially if you're from a science background, because I suppose you're not used to not having a right answer or a wrong answer. It's all about abstract and maybe that, and ponderings and musings, and that doesn't come naturally to everyone. It comes a little bit easier, I think, to those of us with a humanities background. And it's where I picked up my marks. I scored an 81 in this in the first time I sat Gamsat. The second time I sat it, I scored a 77. I don't know why they took marks off me. Still a good mark, but I mean, I did get the 81 first time around. So here are some advice and tips. The first one is, the most important one is, there is no formula. Not one, just write something good. It's as simple as that. There is none. Like, people will tell you the first essay has to be critical, the second one has to be philosophical, it has to be this, has to be that. No, it doesn't. All they're looking for is that you're able to put together some kind of conscious stream of thought in a way that entertains them, because let's face it, marking those essays has to be really, really dull. And entertain them, inform them, educate them. That's what the BBC says, to educate, to inform and entertain. And that predisposes them to giving you a good mark. So forget about the rules, forget about everything you've heard about it, put that out of your head. The only thing you need to do for section 2 is to be able to put together a good stream of thought, be that making an argument, telling a story, entertaining somebody with a beginning, middle and end. That's it. It really is that simple. Second of all, you may think, how do I even get around doing that? I admit I had an advantage. I worked in media, news and current affairs for over 10 years, so I was used to seeing people make arguments, present different stories, different events. I've covered different world events. That certainly gave me a wider abstract view of the world, but there's no reason why you won't have that either, and you'll get that by consuming decent news media, by reading stuff, by watching stuff, by following people online. Follow people who challenge you, who open up a different way of thinking. You don't always have to agree with them. I mean, sometimes I find, for example, like, obviously I'm Irish, I'm going to find the idea of Brexit, I can't fathom why people thought this was a good idea, but it is worth listening to people who make good rational arguments that they believe as to why they voted for Brexit, and it helped me formulate ideas to make arguments for and against Brexit. So basically, very, very simply, that's just one way of figuring out to think about things that perhaps you didn't think about before. And that's where it comes into, like, I know we all have our Twitter feeds and Instagram feeds, and part of the big problem there is we self-curate them, so we kind of hear our own vacuum. But, bring in things like RT News, the BBC News, The Economist, have them in your feed as you're scrolling through. That will help. It will go in via osmosis. That's a science term, and it will help you out. And the next big tip I will give you on this is that you're getting your thoughts together. You got to start practicing. Practice, 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 practice some more. It's the easiest way to pick up marks. Once, twice a week, write an essay. First of all, get your timings right. You have to write 2 essays in an hour based on a theme. The themes are really abstract. They can be anything based on freedom, independence, nuclear war, free healthcare, the argument against free healthcare, the sun, the moon and the stars. They give you 5 quotes. You have to decide what the theme is, what they're talking about, and then you're writing it in 30 minutes or less. And that's not easy. The first thing I would tell you is go to plenty of online websites, do quote generators, and then you work away from that, pretend that's given to you in the exam, and go and time yourself 30 minutes or less. It doesn't matter if your essay is wonderful. If you can't write it in 30 minutes or less, ain't nobody going to read it, because it's not going to be written on time, and you're not going to get the marks you deserve that you've worked really hard for. Get your timings right first of all. Once you're there, start trying to make your essays better. And this is where your reading is going to come in. This is where you're challenging the way you're thinking. This is where going to getting your daily challenge from vocabulary.com or dictionary.com starts to reap rewards. Sometimes, don't bother reading Shakespeare. Go to the Wikipedia section if you think that might help you, if you need some quotes in your back pocket. I like to always have a few Shakespearean quotes. I like to have a few Churchill quotes. And then I like to have a few Irish quotes as well, because I like to imagine this is an Australian correcting my paper and they want to be a bit entertained by it, and I might give them something they don't read that often, and they might go and Google that, and they might go, oh, she actually does know what she's talking about, and that predisposes them to give you marks. And as I say reading, as I talk about reading, the next thing I have to bring up is writing. We're so used to typing, even the Acer paper, the exam, the sample thing they give you that you pay for, that somebody or a computer generated answer. You will come when you buy the exam papers, you're allowed to write up an essay and a computer will give you a computer generated mark. Obviously, you're typing that up, but in the exam, when it comes to Gamsat, you are not typing, you are writing. So when you're doing your practicing, practice writing. And it is hard because nobody's used to writing anymore. And you got to write that really, really fast. Like super fast. Speedy Gonzalez fast. Usain Bolt fast. I can't emphasize how fast you need to be able to write this. And then obviously, how fast you write affects the quality of your writing and your penmanship. If you're anything like me, I already have the doctor's handwriting. I don't need to practice off my prescription pads, but you need to let that examiner be able to read the brilliance you're going to put on paper. So make sure from day one when you're doing your practice essays that you actually write them down. And this brings me on to the third or fourth point. I can't even remember where I'm at. How am I supposed to be a doctor? I can't even count. That's neither here nor there. The next thing you need to know then is get somebody to correct them for you. Get somebody, maybe somebody like me, for example, with my 10 years experience in media. I do have a lot of kind of knowledge in here stored. I'm able to see what a good argument is, what isn't, for example. And I've also sat through it, so I know. So go to somebody who's maybe sat the exam, who's willing to correct them for you and give you some constructive criticism. Maybe go to an English teacher, a history teacher, a lawyer, somebody who reads the newspapers every day. Like, for example, like my dad is one of the best read people in the world, and he will always say he's not the most educated, but he watches the news every day. He'll be able to pull your essay apart very, very quickly if he's not happy with it. Just somebody like that who will give you constructive criticism, who will help you improve. And I suppose this brings me to my final point, which is kind of wraps it all up at the top when I said there is no hard and fast rules in this. The more you practice, you will find your style. Everyone has an easier way of styling. For me, I liked writing essays hooked on experiences that I had. For example, as a woman working in a male-dominated industry, for example, that was a good place to hook a lot of the themes on. Northern Ireland, my experiences growing up in Ireland, there were very good ways during the recession, for example, and I had a front row seat to some of these events as the Irish economy was falling off the cliff. I was there in Leinster House on my microphone, which was really helpful to help me write these essays. But you can get those experiences too just by watching the news and going over, reading The Economist, following some Facebook pages that are run by people who encourage thought. Watch some TED Talks. Even on your daily commute, watch a TED Talk a day. You'll be amazed at how quickly these ideas will infiltrate your head and how quickly you'll be able to regurgitate these onto paper and use it to launchpad your own independent thought. Because if you're sitting Gamsat, you're a fairly driven individual to begin with. There's no reason why this could be beyond you either. And like I said, it's the easiest place to pick up marks. It's the reason why I and so many of my colleagues are in medicine at the moment, because we picked up these marks here. And at 81, I know what I'm talking about. I might not know a lot about life. I certainly still don't know much about medicine. I do know about Section 2 and Gamsat. That's what you got to do. So I'm going to do a quick recap now. What you need to do is, first of all, ignore those style guides. They don't matter. They don't exist. Write something that is legible, that is coherent, that informs, that entertains, has a beginning, middle and end. Practice it. Practice it on paper. That means good old ink. Forget your computer. Get somebody to read it up for you. Get somebody to give you some constructive criticism. And through this, find your style. Do 1 or 2 of these a week. Coming up to it, when you decide you're sitting the exam, bada bing, bada boom, by the end, you're going to have a great mark, 70 plus, I guarantee you. That's it. Any other questions? Feel free to get in touch. Put your comments here. Come to my website, performancemt.ie, or go to my Instagram or Twitter page. And if I can help you out, I will. If not, I'll try and direct you to the person who can. Okay, Sinead, thanks a million. Slán go fóill.